History is usually written in ink, on paper that crumbles or in languages that fade. But in the dense jungles of southern Mexico, history was written in something else. It was written in basalt. For over 2,000 years, they have stood in silence. 17 stone giants, their eyes open, their expressions calm, staring out across a landscape that has forgotten their names. We call them the colossal heads. We attribute them to the Olmecs, the mother culture of Mesoamerica. We tell ourselves we understand them. We say they are portraits of ancient kings, monuments to forgotten rulers carved by primitive hands using stone chisels. But that story is beginning to fracture. Deep underground and locked inside the stone itself, a new narrative is emerging. Archaeologists and technicians have recently turned the most advanced eyes we possess, artificial intelligence and sub-millimeter laser scanning, onto these ancient artifacts. They were looking for preservation data. They were looking for cracks and erosion. Instead, they found the impossible. Patterns that defy the geology of the rock, tool marks that mirror modern machining, and deep inside the volcanic core, hidden voids that suggest these were never just statues. The data suggests that everything we know about the Olmecs is wrong. To understand the anomaly, we must first understand the scale of the achievement. The Olmec civilization emerged in the humidity of Veracruz and Tabasco around 1500 BCE, centuries before Rome, long before the Maya or the Aztec empires rose to power. They were the architects of Mesoamerica, building the first ceremonial centers and leaving behind the first writing systems. But their defining legacy is the heads. These are not modest sculptures. The largest stands over 3 meters tall. The heaviest weighs nearly 50 tons. They are carved from basalt, a volcanic rock born from the cooling of lava. It is dense, unforgiving, and incredibly hard. The mystery begins with the stone itself. The boulders were quarried from the Sierra de los Tuxtlas, a volcanic range over 90 kilometers away from the Olmec capitals of San Lorenzo and La Venta. In 1500 BCE, there were no beasts of burden in the Americas. No horses, no oxen. There was no metal, no iron chisels, no bronze saws. And crucially, there was no wheel. Mainstream archaeology suggests these 50-ton monsters were dragged by hundreds of men through swamps or floated on massive rafts against river currents. It is a theory that demands a suspension of disbelief. But the physical evidence for how they did it, the ropes, the sleds, the docks, has vanished. All that remains is the result, perfect craftsmanship that seems to defy the technological limitations of the era. For decades, we accepted this. We marveled at the primitive ingenuity. But now, we have looked closer. The decision to scan the Olmec heads was born of necessity, not curiosity. Basalt is tough, but it is not immortal. Erosion, acid rain, and vandalism are slowly erasing these faces. Researchers initiated a project to create a digital archive, a high-resolution backup of the sculptures for future conservation. They used structured light scanning, laser surface mapping, and AI-driven density modeling. These tools capture reality at a resolution the human eye cannot perceive. The AI was trained to filter out noise, to distinguish between a natural crack, a patch of moss, and a deliberate cut.
The system was designed to document history. Instead, it began to question it. As the algorithms processed the surface topography, the software began flagging inconsistencies. These were features too subtle to be seen by an archaeologist standing a foot away, but glaringly obvious to a computer measuring depth in microns. The first anomaly appeared on the side of a head found at San Lorenzo. The AI isolated a series of parallel striations running along the jaw, tucked beneath a decorative helmet element. These were not the chaotic, impact-driven marks of a stone chisel. Stone-on-stone carving leaves a distinct signature: microfractures and uneven pitting. These marks were different. They were smooth, continuous, and equidistant. They resembled the abrasion scoring seen in modern rotary machining. The implications are unsettling. To achieve this finish on basalt without metal requires an abrasive technology and a rotational stability that does not exist in the archaeological record of 1500 BCE. The marks were too shallow to be ceremonial, too precise to be accidental, and too protected to be weathering. They were the first thread in a sweater that was about to unravel. The scan data moved from surface texture to geometry. The AI performed a bilateral symmetry analysis, folding the digital model of the face in half to check for alignment. Human faces are rarely perfectly symmetrical. Hand-carved statues, even by masters, always betray the bias of the artist. A left eye slightly lower, a mouth pulling to one side. But one of the heads returned a result that shocked the analysts. The alignment between the eyes, the nose, and the lips was accurate to within 2 millimeters across a massive, three-dimensional curved surface. This level of tolerance is architectural. It implies the use of templates, complex measurement tools, or a modular layout system that we have never attributed to the Olmecs. Then, there were the hidden shapes. On the back of a head from Tres Zapotes, in a region practically invisible to the naked eye due to surface weathering, the scanner detected a shallow relief. It wasn't a face. It was a spiral. It ran for nearly a meter, expanding outward from a central point near the crown. It was geometrically perfect, a mathematical arc executed on a curved surface. Why carve a symbol of such precision on the back of a monument only to leave it so shallow it could barely be seen? Unless it wasn't meant to be seen. Unless the shape itself served a function we have yet to comprehend. The most disturbing discovery, however, did not come from the surface. It came from within. Using advanced density modeling, an AI technique that predicts internal material composition based on surface resonance and light refraction, the researchers peered inside the stone. Basalt is volcanic. It should be solid or perhaps contain random spherical gas bubbles frozen in time. But in 2 of the scanned heads, the model collapsed. It detected a void. This was not a random air pocket. The void was linear. In one head, it appeared as a vertical shaft enclosed entirely within the rock, undetectable from the outside. In another, the density shift suggested a plug of different material, stone that had a different magnetic signature than the surrounding basalt. Nature does not create straight lines inside cooling lava. Nature does not insert different minerals in perfect geometric bands. This suggests a terrifying possibility. Either the Olmecs found boulders with natural anomalies and built around them, or they possessed a method to alter or insert structures into the core of a 50-ton megalith.
Archaeology has long suspected that the heads were recycled. We know that the Olmecs carved massive tabletop altars and thrones. Many experts believe the colossal heads were carved from these thrones after a ruler died or was overthrown. The scans support this. We see tool marks crossing at odd angles, suggesting earlier designs were erased. We see features that don't fit the final composition. But the new data pushes this theory into stranger territory. If they were recycling stone, why preserve the anomalies? Why leave the machining marks under the jaw? Why align the face with such mathematical rigor if the stone was just secondhand material? And then there is the placement. At La Venta, 4 heads were found buried in a specific alignment. They were not displayed in a plaza to be worshipped. They were sunk into the earth, facing specific cardinal directions: north, south, east, west. They were part of a grid. The AI analysis suggests that the anomalies, the magnetic ores found in the forehead of one sculpture, the internal voids, the precise symmetry, might be functional components of this grid. Were these heads merely statues, or were they anchors? Were they part of a geomantic machine, a system designed to mark, measure, or perhaps interact with the Earth's magnetic field? We are left with a picture that refuses to fit the frame. On one hand, we have the established history, a pre-wheel, pre-metal society that moved mountains through sheer human will. On the other hand, we have the data, sub-millimeter precision, unexplained tool marks, and internal structures that imply a complexity far beyond simple carving. The AI did not hallucinate these features. It simply removed the bias of the human eye. It stripped away our assumptions and left us with the raw geometry. Perhaps the heads were never meant to be just portraits. Perhaps the helmets they wear are not warrior gear, but technological or ritual attire denoting a specific function. Perhaps the act of burying them was not a ritual of abandonment, but an act of activation, placing the components into the circuit of the Earth. The discovery of the internal anomalies forces us to ask, what else is hidden? If we scan the great platforms of San Lorenzo, the buried mosaics of La Venta, will we find more impossible data? The Olmec civilization vanished 2,000 years ago. They left no books to explain their science. They left no blueprints to explain their tools. They left only the stones. For centuries, we thought the stones were silent. We thought they were simple. We projected our own limitations onto the past, assuming that without metal, there could be no precision. Without writing, there could be no complex data storage. But the technology of the future has finally allowed us to hear the technology of the past. The heads are speaking now. They are telling us that the history of human capability is older, deeper, and far more mysterious than we dared to imagine. The scan is complete. The anomalies are real. The only question remaining is, are we ready to accept what they mean?